top 4 actors Robert Duvall hated the most. For over 6 decades, Robert Duvall has stood as one of Hollywood's most respected figures, an actor whose unflinching integrity and extraordinary talent earned him legendary status among peers and audiences alike. Behind that stoic professionalism, however, simmered opinions he kept carefully guarded until now. In a shocking interview that has Hollywood reeling, the 94-year-old Oscar winner has finally broken his decades-long silence, naming the 4 actors he absolutely couldn't stand during his illustrious career. These weren't mere professional disagreements. These were deep-seated animosities that shaped productions, altered performances, and in some cases, changed the trajectory of classic films we thought we knew. "I've held my tongue for decades," Duvall reportedly stated, "but at 94, what exactly am I waiting for? It's time for the truth." What makes these revelations so stunning isn't just their content, but their source. Duvall has long been considered Hollywood's consummate professional, the actor who never had a bad word for anyone. That this paragon of discretion has finally shattered his silence suggests conflicts so profound they've haunted him into his 10th decade. Prepare yourself for the unvarnished reality behind some of cinema's most iconic collaborations. Feuds so intense they remained hidden in plain sight across legendary performances that millions have watched without ever suspecting the genuine hatred simmering just beneath the surface. The breaking point: why Duvall finally spoke out. Before revealing the 4 names that have sent shockwaves through Hollywood, we must understand what finally pushed this notoriously private actor to break his lifelong code of silence. According to those close to Duvall, the catalyst wasn't a single event, but a profound reflection on legacy that often comes in life's final chapters. Robert reached a point where he felt the historical record needed correction, revealed a longtime associate who requested anonymity. He's watched too many Hollywood documentaries and retrospectives that painted completely false pictures of relationships that were actually toxic behind the scenes. The final trigger reportedly came during a recent tribute to his career, where Duvall watched montages of his work alongside actors he secretly despised, all while the narrative celebrated wonderful collaborations and deep friendships that simply never existed. "I sat there listening to all this revisionist nonsense about mutual respect and creative partnerships," Duvall told his interviewer. "Meanwhile, I'm thinking about how one of these people once deliberately stepped on my lines to ruin takes, and another tried to get me fired from what became one of my signature roles." At 94, with an Academy Award, multiple nominations, and a legacy firmly secured, Duvall concluded he no longer needed to maintain Hollywood's carefully constructed illusions. More importantly, he felt a responsibility to young actors entering the industry. These kids deserve to know that even the greatest films sometimes come from difficult situations. He explained that sometimes excellent performances happen not because of great relationships, but despite terrible ones. That's the reality of this business nobody talks about. With this explanation delivered in his characteristically straightforward manner, Duvall then proceeded to name names, sending ripples through an industry built on carefully maintained public images and strategic silences. And the first name he mentioned left even hardened Hollywood veterans stunned. 1. Marlon Brando, the most destructive ego I ever encountered. The first actor in Duvall's unprecedented revelation stunned the entertainment world, not because of personal obscurity, but because of his towering reputation. Marlon Brando, widely considered the greatest actor of all time. Brando was a genius, no question, Duvall acknowledged. He was also the most destructive ego I ever encountered in this business, a man who would sabotage entire productions just to prove he could. Their paths crossed most significantly during the troubled production of The Chase, 1966, a film largely forgotten today, but featuring a cast including Brando, Duvall, Jane Fonda, and Robert Redford. What audiences never knew was that behind the cameras, a psychological war was unfolding that would shape Duvall's approach to acting for decades. Marlon would deliberately change his performance on different takes to make editing impossible, Duvall revealed. If he didn't like the director's approach, he'd intentionally ruin coverage of other actors' scenes. He called it protecting the integrity of the performance. I called it professional sabotage. The conflict reached its breaking point during a pivotal scene where Duvall, then still building his career, had his most significant monologue. According to multiple sources now willing to corroborate Duvall's account, Brando repeatedly disrupted the scene by making small noises off camera during Duvall's takes, subtle enough that only the microphones would pick them up, requiring multiple retakes. After the 5th ruined take, I confronted him, Duvall recounted. He just smiled and said, "Maybe you should be stronger in your choices." That was Marlon. He'd sabotage you, then frame it as your weakness. What makes this revelation particularly shocking is how it contradicts the public narrative about their relationship. For decades, Duvall has cited Brando as an influence, even while privately harboring this resentment. The two would work in proximity again on The Godfather, though they shared no scenes, a scheduling decision that now appears less coincidental than previously assumed. "I learned more from watching Marlon than anyone else," Duvall admitted, "but what I learned wasn't just about acting technique. I learned how not to treat colleagues. I learned that genius doesn't excuse cruelty." This complicated relationship, admiration for Brando's talent coupled with disdain for his behavior, explains why Duvall maintained his silence for so long. But as shocking as this first revelation was, the second name on Duvall's list proved even more unexpected. 2. James Caan, competitive to the point of malice. The second actor named by Duvall hit particularly close to home for Hollywood insiders. His Godfather co-star James Caan portrayed Sonny Corleone alongside Duvall's Tom Hagen in what many consider the greatest film ever made. "Jimmy and I created one of the most believable brother relationships in film history," Duvall stated, "and we did it while barely speaking to each other off camera. That's acting." According to Duvall, the conflict began during early rehearsals for The Godfather, when both actors were contending for position within the film's sprawling ensemble. While Duvall approached the production with his characteristic preparation and professionalism, he claims Caan engaged in constant one-upmanship and scene-stealing tactics. "Jimmy was competitive to the point of malice," Duvall revealed. "He'd deliberately try to upstage everyone, especially me. If I had an important moment in a scene, he'd suddenly add some business with his hands or make some exaggerated facial expression, anything to pull focus." The situation deteriorated further during the famous family meeting scene, where the Corleones discuss going to war with the Tattaglia family. Between takes, Duvall had been quietly discussing his character's motivations with director Francis Ford Coppola when Caan allegedly interrupted with a dismissive comment about overthinking glorified secretary roles. "That was the moment I decided we would never be friends," Duvall recalled. "I also decided Tom Hagen would always be watching Sonny carefully in our scenes together, which actually helped the performance because that's exactly what a consigliere would do with a hothead like Sonny." What makes this revelation particularly startling is how successfully both actors concealed their animosity through multiple press tours, anniversary celebrations, and reunions over the years. In joint interviews promoting The Godfather, they projected warm camaraderie that completely masked their genuine feelings. "When we were promoting the film, we both understood what was at stake," Duvall explained. "We weren't going to let personal issues damage something that important. So we smiled, told the right stories, and played our parts. That's also acting." This professional determination to protect the film, despite personal animosity, reveals much about Duvall's character, and explains why these resentments remained hidden for decades. But while his conflicts with Brando and Caan remained largely professional, his third revelation suggests a much more personal betrayal. 3. Dustin Hoffman, the credit thief who never stopped. The third name on Duvall's unprecedented list struck many as particularly surprising given their similar career trajectories. Fellow character actor turned leading man Dustin Hoffman, with whom Duvall shared a close connection early in their careers. "Dustin and I were struggling actors together in New York," Duvall recalled. "We were friends, or so I thought, but friendship to Hoffman meant something very different than it did to me." Their conflict originated during their early days as roommates in New York City during the early 1960s, when both were unknown actors sharing a small apartment while auditioning for theater roles. According to Duvall, what began as friendly competition took a darker turn when Hoffman repeatedly used rehearsal sessions to borrow techniques and approaches that Duvall had developed. "I'd work for weeks on a particular interpretation for an audition," Duvall explained. "I'd practice it in our apartment. Then suddenly, Dustin would get called for the same part, and he'd use my exact approach, sometimes word for word. When he got the role, he'd say I'd inspired him. That's a fancy word for theft." This pattern reportedly continued as both men found success in Hollywood. During production of True Grit, 1969, where Duvall played the outlaw Ned Pepper, he claims Hoffman called him repeatedly for insights on character development and vocal techniques for his own role in Midnight Cowboy, which was filming around the same time. "I spent hours on those calls helping him find Ratso Rizzo's voice," Duvall said. "Then I read an interview where he claimed he'd developed the character's vocal patterns by observing observing homeless people in New York for months. Never once mentioned our conversations. The final breaking point came during a period when both actors were being considered for the lead role in The French Connection, 1971, a part that eventually went to Gene Hackman. According to production sources who have since corroborated Duvall's account, Hoffman allegedly told director William Friedkin that Duvall was difficult and uncooperative based on their early theater experiences, a characterization Duvall believes cost him the career-defining role. That crossed a line from professional competition to deliberate sabotage, Duvall stated. I confronted him about it years later, and he denied it, but I had it from Friedkin himself. Despite these grievances, Duvall maintained public cordiality with Hoffman for decades, even appearing at the same events and speaking respectfully of his work. This professional facade explains why this revelation has shocked the industry, with many colleagues expressing surprise at the depth of resentment between two actors widely considered among the greatest of their generation. But if Duvall's feelings about Hoffman have surprised Hollywood, his final revelation has completely stunned the entertainment world, targeting an actor whose reputation seemed beyond reproach. 4. Robert Redford, the fraud behind the golden image. The final and perhaps most shocking name on Duvall's list represents Hollywood royalty, Robert Redford, whose golden boy image and reputation for integrity have remained largely unchallenged throughout his illustrious career. Redford crafted the perfect public persona, Duvall stated, the thoughtful artist, the environmentalist, the champion of independent film. The reality I experienced was something else entirely, a calculating opportunist who treated crew members like furniture and fellow actors like obstacles. Their conflict began during production of The Natural, 1984, where Duvall portrayed sports columnist Max Mercy opposite Redford's aging baseball phenomenon Roy Hobbs. What should have been a straightforward working relationship quickly soured when Duvall observed Redford's treatment of the production team. He would keep entire crews waiting for hours while he prepared, Duvall recalled, not because he was deep in character work. He'd be on the phone handling business deals. Meanwhile, everybody else is standing around on salary while the day burns away. That's not artistry, that's arrogance. The situation deteriorated further during filming of their key confrontation scenes. According to Duvall, Redford repeatedly pressed director Barry Levinson to reduce Duvall's role, suggesting certain scenes were unnecessary to the story, specifically scenes where Max Mercy challenged Roy Hobbs's carefully constructed narrative. It became clear he viewed any strong presence opposite him as a threat, Duvall explained. This wasn't about serving the story, it was about ensuring he dominated every frame of film. The irony of him playing a character threatened by my character's journalistic expose while simultaneously trying to diminish my role off camera wasn't lost on me. What particularly rankled Duvall was the contrast between this behavior and Redford's carefully maintained public image as a champion of artistic integrity and collaboration, especially through his Sundance Institute. He'd preach artistic purity at Sundance, then return to sets where he demanded final cut privileges and approval over other actors' casting, Duvall stated. The gap between image and reality was stunning. The most damning allegation involves Redford's reported response when Duvall confronted him about these behaviors during post-production on The Natural. According to production staff who witnessed the exchange, Redford dismissed Duvall's concerns with a statement that has clearly festered for decades. You're a character actor, Bob. I'm a movie star. We're not playing by the same rules. That moment crystallized everything, Duvall recalled. The fraud behind the golden image. I never looked at him the same way again. This final revelation has perhaps caused the greatest shockwaves through Hollywood, coming as it does from one respected Robert about another. It challenges decades of carefully maintained public perception about Redford's character and professional relationships, and raises questions about other carefully constructed star images throughout the industry. The aftermath, Hollywood responds to Duvall's revelations. In the days following Duvall's extraordinary interview, Hollywood has erupted in a mixture of shock, denial, corroboration, and soul-searching. Representatives for Hoffman and Redford, the only living actors named, have issued carefully worded statements expressing surprise at Duvall's characterizations and emphasizing great respect for his contributions to cinema. More telling, however, has been the wave of industry veterans quietly confirming aspects of Duvall's accounts. Multiple crew members from The Natural have come forward with similar stories about Redford's on-set behavior. A former assistant director from The Godfather confirmed the palpable tension between Duvall and Caan during production. Even Francis Ford Coppola, while declining to address specific relationships, acknowledged that the chemistry you see on screen sometimes comes from very complicated personal dynamics behind the camera. Perhaps most significantly, several prominent actors have privately contacted Duvall to thank him for finally saying what many of us have experienced but never felt safe expressing publicly, according to sources close to the actor. For his part, Duvall appears unburdened rather than regretful about breaking his decades-long silence. In a brief follow-up statement, he emphasized that his intent wasn't to damage legacies, but to correct a historical record that had been sanitized to the point of fiction. "I've given 60 years to this industry and treated it with respect," his statement reads. "Part of that respect means being honest about its realities, both good and bad. These weren't minor disagreements or momentary conflicts. These were sustained behaviors that affected productions and people's livelihoods. That deserves to be part of the historical record, not just the sanitized version we've all agreed to pretend is the truth." As the entertainment world continues processing these unprecedented revelations, one question remains. After 6 decades of disciplined silence, does Duvall have more truth bombs to drop? His cryptic final comment in the interview suggests the possibility. "These 4 stood out, but they weren't alone. Hollywood has always been better at creating myths than acknowledging realities. Maybe it's time for more reality." The larger truth, what Duvall's revelations tell us about Hollywood. As the dust settles on Robert Duvall's extraordinary breaking of ranks, a more profound question emerges. What do these revelations tell us about the entertainment industry and the carefully constructed narratives we've accepted about our cultural icons? Duvall's willingness to finally name names doesn't just expose 4 difficult relationships, it pulls back the curtain on Hollywood's elaborate machinery of image creation and maintenance. For decades, publicists, studios, and the actors themselves have collaborated to present conflicts as creative differences and difficult behaviors as artistic temperament. Duvall's blunt assessments shatter these euphemisms, revealing the raw, personal animosities that often exist behind celebrated performances. Perhaps most significantly, these revelations force us to reconsider what we think we know about artistic collaboration in film. The magic we see on screen, the chemistry between Tom Hagen and Sonny Corleone, the tension between Max Mercy and Roy Hobbs, wasn't always the result of creative harmony. Sometimes, as Duvall makes clear, transcendent performances emerge not from mutual respect, but from genuine conflict channeled into the work. Great art doesn't always come from great relationships, noted veteran director Sidney Lumet before his death. A principle Duvall's career seems to validate: his ability to create authentic, powerful performances opposite actors he personally despised speaks to a professionalism that transcends personality, a commitment to the work that ultimately matters more than feelings. For young actors entering the industry, Duvall's honesty offers both warning and wisdom. The warning, Hollywood's collaborative image often masks competitive reality. The wisdom, personal feelings need not determine professional quality. One can create memorable work even in difficult circumstances if the commitment to craft remains paramount. As Duvall enters what are likely the final years of his extraordinary life and career, his decision to finally speak his truth appears less like score settling and more like legacy securing, ensuring that the historical record reflects reality rather than publicity. In doing so, he's performed perhaps his most authentic role yet, truth teller in an industry built on beautiful illusions. If you found this exploration of Hollywood's hidden conflicts enlightening, please hit that like button and subscribe for more glimpses behind the entertainment industry's carefully constructed facades. We'd love to hear in the comments which revelation surprised you most, or which other Hollywood legends you'd like us to investigate in future videos. Until next time, remember that the most compelling dramas in Hollywood often unfold not on screen, but behind it, and sometimes it takes a legend in his 9th decade to finally reveal what the cameras never captured.